Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to day 3 of Meta Forum 2021. This is the last session in the program of this Meta Forum, and after this session we will then immediately close the conference. But before we do that, we have this session on the EU project European Language Equality.
Hello, good morning.
Or ELE for short, and we will present together with colleagues from the consortium various preliminary results of the project. So I will kick things off very briefly with a few remarks on the project itself. Then I will hand over to the colleagues to present what we've been working about in the last 11 months in the project. So ELE is a sister project to ELG. It's a fairly big consortium consisting of 52 partners from all over Europe. The project is coordinated by the ADAPT Center, Dublin City University in Ireland. Andy Way is unfortunately off sick today. He's got a cold and cough, and he cannot attend. He says hi and would have liked to be here. The objective of the project is not research. Yeah, this is not a research project, not a typical research project. In fact, it's more like a coordination and support action. This project is developing a strategic research, innovation, and deployment agenda to achieve digital language equality in Europe by 2030. So if you look back at the MetaNet white papers, back then in 2012, 2013, we found out that 21 European, or at least 21 European languages are threatened by digital language extinction. Yeah, and back then we started this movement, this idea of preparing language technologies for all languages in Europe in a balanced and equal way, so that all languages can participate in this digital revolution with language technologies, and no languages are left behind digitally. So digital language equality we don't have right now, and this project is preparing a strategy and a plan how to bring it about until 2030. It's a 1.5-year project, and ELE and ELG will both finish up in June 2022. And we started with ELE in January this year. It's not a Horizon 2020 project. This is just a technicality, but just so that you're aware of this, it's not a Horizon project. It's a PPPA project. So if you're interested to learn more what that means, you can reach out to me, and I will explain. I will try to explain it via email. The budget of the project you can see on the slide, and now in November 2021, we are more than halfway through our work program already, on our work plan in the project already. So the project is now running in full steam. To contextualize this, back in 2018, and we've seen this slide before, the European Parliament passed this document, this resolution, which was originally a joint CULT and ITRE report. Language equality in the digital age is and was the title of this resolution. Went through the parliament with a landslide vote of almost 600 votes, and there are quite a few relevant recommendations in this paper, such as to establish a large-scale, long-term coordinated funding program for research, development, and innovation in the field of language technologies at European, national, and regional levels, tailored specifically to Europe's needs and demands, to create a European LT platform for sharing of services, that's now ELG, obviously, and that Europe has to secure its leadership in language-centric AI. And this document is the main political context and driving force behind this pilot project, ELE. As mentioned, 52 partners with a group of 5 core partners that you can see on the slide. What leading the different work packages and who where all the different strings are pulled together. In the project, we have a number of networks, associations, and initiatives in the consortium, such as LT Innovate, via Crosslane, FNIL, ELAN, ECSPM, and various others, who represent either users or developers of language technologies. And you will learn more about this distinction in a few minutes. We have a number of LT developing companies, such as Tilde, Elder, Expert System, and so on, who represent the industry side of things, and then a large group of research organizations who, in a way, represent the different language communities also that we want to target. And these are our language experts for the different languages represented in and taken into account of ELE that provide specifically language-specific or language-focused expertise to the project. And the approach is that, essentially very simple. The main result is the strategic agenda and roadmap. How to bring about digital language equality in Europe by 2030. And all deliverables, everything that we do in the project is really geared towards this specific result. So all reports, all deliverables provide input for the strategic agenda. Among others, what we do in the project is the research partners. I just listed them on the slide. They produce updates of the MetaNet white papers. We had them about 10 years ago. We thought now's a good time to revisit them, to revisit the results, maybe to prepare the results in a different way, in a more empirically grounded way. And these updates will not be 60-page books, but more like 10, 15-page short summaries of the current situation and where we currently stand. Similar approach will be done by the networks, by the different initiatives who prepare their input. What does network A, B, C think about digital language equality? What can they contribute? What kinds of wishes and visions do they have for their own communities? What does it mean to have digital language equality in Europe? And how can we benefit from that? The companies produce 4 technical deep dives. We looked into 4 different fields: machine translation, speech, text analytics, and data. And the companies now really do the deep dive into what's the current state of play, where do we want to be in 10 years, what can the European approach towards all of these technologies be, and how can the industry side of the landscape provide input and technologies and resources for digital language equality. And we have a couple of additional reports and strategic papers are being desk researched and summarized to see what are the big trends in Europe, and so on and so forth. In total, this project is looking at to varying degrees of detail. We're looking at 77 languages in total. They are listed on the webpage, listed on the slide. And in total, I just counted them again the other day, 66 deliverables in the project, which is a very high number, but it's by design. Already submitted 8 and currently in production about 50. So that's the typical PERT chart with the work packages. We're not going through every single bullet point here. What I want to highlight, though, is the main setup here at the top. We have work package 1, which is led by ILSP in Athens, Greece, which is looking at the current state of play, the current status quo in 2020, 21, 22. Where are we with regard to digital language equality? What is digital language equality in the first place? How can we define it? How can we define it empirically, and how can we measure it with a metric, for example? What's the current state of play with regard to language technologies? Where are we? What needs to be done to even improve the state of the art more? And of course, what's the LT support of Europe's languages right now? Some languages are probably still left behind. Others maybe have gained a bit of ground in the meantime. And we are looking at the current state of play in work package 1. Work package 2 is looking into the future. So we are with a number of surveys in tasks 2.1, 2.2. We are looking at the different networks, at the different initiatives, what they can provide in terms of digital language equality, resources, services, tools, but also wishes and demands and visions for the future. Where do we want to be as a multilingual Europe, as a technologically enabled multilingual information society in Europe in 2030? Do we want and need LT in every single device? Is it going to be a different setup? How are we doing this? Yeah? And all of these different work streams and reports and ideas and inputs are then being distilled in work package 3. Work package 2 is led, I forgot to mention that, by Charles University in the Czech Republic. University of the Basque country is leading work package 3, which will then distill everything into the strategic agenda and roadmap. We have a very tight time frame for this, so I hope we will be able to compress these about 60 deliverables into one coherent document then next year. And out of these different outputs, then we will not only produce the short version of the strategic agenda, but also a book that will report on all the results of the project. Right, so let's have a look at the timeline. Yeah, the pink arrow is pointing at where we are right now, month 11, November 2021. You can see the groundwork has been laid, and next up is a large bunch of deliverables that some of which we will hear about in the next presentations. So everything is geared towards month 18, where the project will finish up in June next year with a joint meta forum together with the ELG project, where we will hopefully be able to hand over our results and our recommendations to the European Union. Right, just as an overview, I mentioned that we have about 50 deliverables currently in progress. Production is in full swing. This is a screenshot of our overleaf page. Yeah, we write all the deliverables in overleaf using LaTeX, which was a very, very good decision. And you can see, yeah, work is in full swing on these different deliverables. And I'm very happy that the colleagues, yeah, spread all over Europe are so engaged and so active in this project here, helping producing dozens and dozens of reports. So that was my brief introduction. Next up, we have 5 presentations given by 4 colleagues on 5 different topics with preliminary results of the ELE project. I will just give you a brief overview. So first up, we will have an overview of the LT and AI strategies in Europe. Yeah, so all the different countries, or almost all different countries, by now have produced their own national AI strategies, and we thought maybe we should look at what language plays, or what kind of role language plays in these strategies. And Herman will give an overview of the results here. Next up then, digital language equality. How can we define this? How can we define this in such a way so that we can measure digital language equality or digital readiness, technical readiness of languages ideally in an automated way? And Federico will talk about this. Next up then, Maria will talk about the fairly complex exercise of finding additional language resources and language reports, language resources and language tools, language services for the various languages that we're looking at. And also on the production of the language reports. And then following, she will also talk about the European LT Developers Survey. And finally, Natalia will talk about the European LT Users Survey. And then hopefully we have a couple of minutes left to take care of your questions. Okay, so that was the overview. Buckle up, yeah, so this will be a couple of kind of lightning presentations here with the current state of play. And then at Meta Forum next year, you can then see the full picture, how it unfolds. Okay, but first up, it's Herman Rigau from the University of the Basque country on the overview of LT AI strategies in Europe. Herman. floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we are going to present the preliminary results on the overview of the language technology and artificial intelligence strategies in Europe. We have been collecting a lot of reports and documents and research papers for doing already this task. This work package is the one that is going to provide this strategic research agenda and roadmap to ensure the digital language equality in Europe in 2013. And for doing that, we are going to collect a lot of evidence from many resources, in particular, all these documents and research papers that are relevant for this task, and also all the reports, more than 50 reports produced by the project itself, and also a final round for feedback, not only for the 52 partners from the project, but also for other relevant stakeholders that also have an opinion on this. So we are going to collect all this information and try to produce the best possible strategic research agenda and roadmap for the field. So thanks. Could you next, please? Yeah. So the first task was to monitor all strategic research agendas and in the topic of language technology and artificial intelligence. We produced that deliverable on April this year, but we are going to update every 6 months this report with new information. We report here around 200 relevant reports and documents. And in the new version, we're going to include more than 30 new references, additional pointers to relevant documents, and also citations. Obviously, your input is much appreciated. So if you have any additional report that is not already covered by this deliverable, please let us know. Next, please. Yeah. So the content of this deliverable obviously covers a lot of national, international initiatives. It takes into account that this is a multidisciplinary field, so it takes into account things from artificial intelligence, but also linguists, from data science to logic, from signal processing to computer science, from big data to deep learning. So it covers a lot of interesting fields and also relevant fields for language technology. And also it contains a brief history about language technology, and also it reports the current state and the revolution we are living on language technology because of the deep learning era. And the important things here is that we also include a first SWOT analysis that is what we are going to report now, and also a set of recommendations that mainly are derived from the European Parliament resolution. So the main findings right now is that together with vision and robotics, language technology is one of the 3 core application areas in artificial intelligence. So there are 3 main application areas, which are vision, robotics, and language technology. And this is because these are the main places where deep learning technology is already applied. So this new technology allows us to develop unthinkable applications that a few years ago we were unable to think. And we also expect even more exciting results in the near future, because this is progressing so fast. We are, even in the 6 months from the previous version, we have already show a large progress in the field. So it is every 6 months that we see progress here. And we also seen that this is the most relevant technology for one of the most relevant technology for society. It impacts everywhere, and it is quite traversal because language is also traversal in our society. It has a fast-growing economic impact. This is also reflected in the report, but obviously is not equally developed for all European languages. Down before there is the map of endangered language in Europe, reported by the UNESCO Atlas of World Language in Danger by 2010, and we see several black dots where those languages already extincted. So, thanks. Okay, so the SWOT analysis, obviously it contains the strengths and weaknesses, etc. And the strengths are that well, we are seeing the current evolution provided by deep learning techniques. There are also so many different applications already available that are also improving, from machine translation to summarization to image to text, text to image, etc. So there are also in the field multiple and relevant stakeholders at the national level, also international level. We have so many resources available if we are able to have access to that. There is also an increasing number of companies, small and large companies interested in developing things in language technology. The level of readiness is ready to production, so because also of this performance that has current deep learning technology. And also, I think one of the strengths is that language technology can contribute to the inclusive digital societies, for instance, for impairment people, etc. Regarding weaknesses, there are many. We detected so many. Obviously, language deep learning models and pre-trained language models and deep learning technology have shortcomings and limitations, many. We also have reported so many related to this. So it's still our research field to be developed. We also see that there are a large number of actors that are not from the European Union that dominate the multilingual market in Europe. We also see as a weakness that that language technology is not playing a big role in the political agenda and also in the public debate of the Union and the member states. We see so many times the confusion and misconception of what language technology is, because it's confused many times with artificial intelligence. So people doesn't distinguish between the two topics and the two fields. There is no European Union policy to address these language barriers, which is also a problem. Also, there is the copyright directive and all these laws that deal with the access to data. But recently, in November 2021, so we had also they started the European Union with the Data Governance Act, and we are also hoping that this will open access to so many resources that are already available and we already have in the European Union. Maybe there is because of this lack of adequate language technology policies, but we are thinking that maybe we are improving also here. In many countries, there is no, and also there is no official support for many languages. So still there is this a problem in Europe. There is also a problem with many people call as a computing divide between large firms and non-elite universities. So research is more and more complicated and costly because of the need of large computing facilities, and this is also maybe improving because of the recent Euro HPC joint undertaking initiative that in November this month already has provided the first call for projects to be done within these big computing center facilities. And also we see as a weakness the uneven distribution of resources by country, by region and language, so no equality at all. Yeah. Thanks. We also see many opportunities. The ones that provide the new deep learning capabilities. Also, there is opportunity because of all these deep learning capabilities can provide cross-lingual support, multilingual support, and this language technology can also help the European multilingualism, also machine translation, etc. We see that the language technology is almost everywhere, so we can apply all these technology in everyday digital products and service that we use all time. For that can also impact on sectors of fundamental importance for our society, from health to the administration, maybe, to justice, to education, to culture, including tourism, etc. So the places where language technology could be fundamental is enormous. The language technology can offer effective solutions to facilitate these language-related disabilities and impairments also. And maybe also, as we also see is a fast-growing could have a fast-growing economic impact if we apply correctly all these applications. There are also threats. So Georg has mentioned also from the MetaNet white papers that more than 20 European languages are in danger of digital extinction. We already have seen few languages that has been extincted. So this is something that we should take account. Also, all these deep learning models came maybe with non-explainable capabilities. So they are working, but we don't know exactly why. Also, people also say that without common sense. So in fact, they are like parrots most of the time. So they are just producing output which looks nice, but we don't know exactly what they are. Why are they producing this? Also including social bias. So in so many ways, because of the data also contains some bias. Also, these models can contain also personal data, so we can ask for particular data, and maybe we find this data inside. And also have the very heavy impact on carbon footprint. So in reality, are quite dangerous also. All this research. So we need to take that into account. As a threat, we also see that artificial intelligence overshadows the importance and benefits and contributions of language technology, which is also something that worries us. We see it not only in language technology, but also on all the field on artificial intelligence, also beyond on digital capabilities, a loss of human capital training in Europe. They are going outside to big companies because of the salaries, etc. And we also see as a threat the complexity of all these directives that makes the access to resources too costly, maybe also unclear and risky. We hope that the new Data Governance Act will solve, or at least ease all these problems. Yeah, the next things that we expect to happen in the project after these initial reports are the following, more or less. We already have produced also state-of-the-art language technology and language-centric AI. Is on D.1, sorry, D1.2. And we are going to just produce a lot of drafts that are going to be the input for start designing the strategic research agenda and roadmap. We also expect in January the full specification of the digital language equality metrics, etc. And in March, we expect to have the initial version of the strategic agenda, including the roadmap. We are going to have to collect all the feedback in May, around May, produce a deliverable there, and finally in June, produce the strategic research agenda and roadmap, the final version for that. This is more or less what we expect.
Thanks, Raman, for this overview. It's a very, very ambitious time plan that we've gotten ourselves into here, and if we all continue working full steam ahead, then we can make it happen in time. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next up is Federico Gaspari from Dublin City University at Basque in Ireland. And Federico will present our initial thoughts and ideas towards the definition of digital language equality. Federico, the floor is yours.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Georg. Good morning, everybody, and many thanks for joining this session. So, as Georg said, I'm delighted to be presenting to you our initial progress on the definition of digital language equality, which is obviously a central notion of the whole ELE project. This is part of the overall work conducted in Work Package 1, which, as Georg mentioned in the introduction, reflects the current status, the situation of language equality in Europe today. Of course, we want to go beyond that and work towards achieving full digital language equality in Europe by 2030. And to this end, we've put together, with input from the whole consortium partners, as has been mentioned, there are more than 50 of them, but also in consultation with a range of external stakeholders, a preliminary working definition of digital language equality, or DLE, as you'll see in the next few slides, which we produced early on in the project to guide the overall work in the whole action that is going to end in June 2012. However, we expect to refine this initial definition by January 2022. The aims of our definition of digital language equality are to provide a solid theoretical and methodological basis to achieve this vision of full digital language equality for all languages in Europe by 2030. And this is also a key element, a foundational element of the evidence-based strategic research, innovation and development agenda, and of the roadmap that will take us to our objective by 2030. And one important dimension of this is that the definition of digital language equality that we have adopted for the project must enable comparisons among Europe's languages. And in the upcoming talks, my colleague Maria from ILSP in Athens will also give you a little taster for that. And in particular, we want to translate this definition into practice, as it were, to help us as a whole community, which is so well represented at Meta Forum, to identify gaps and what is missing in the provision of language resources and language technologies, which will hopefully help us to prioritize future interventions, to level up the supports, the technological supports that languages have, all of them in Europe, in the digital era. So work is now in progress to refine the official, if you like, complete, fully articulated definition of digital language equality by the beginning of next year. So we now get to the core of my very short presentation, and we decided up front a few criteria that the definition of digital language equality should match. In particular, we aim for a modular or flexible design with a set of quantifiers, measures, and indicators that I'll take you through very briefly shortly. And particularly, we ensured compatibility and interoperability with the European language grid metadata schema. You've heard this mentioned a number of times over the past 2 years. ELG is obviously our sister project, and we made sure that the DLE definition that we adopted in the European Language Equality Project was fully aligned with the whole setup of the ELG. Of course, our work in this did not start in a vacuum, but those of you who've been in the community for the past couple of decades will find some similarities on work that we built on and tried to develop. Work that was done in the early 2000s, for example, by Stephen Crowther, Bente Megard, among others, of the Basic Language Resource Kit. We found that notion quite relevant and interesting, and we tried to develop it and apply it to our work. So hopefully this is firmly rooted in the state of the art, but will also help us guide much needed future developments in LT, language technologies, and the creation, collection, and curation of language resources. So now this is the preliminary working definition, so it will be further tweaked and refined. I'll try and read it and give you a couple of seconds to also look at it on the screen. So within the European Language Equality Project, we define digital language equality as the state of affairs in which all languages have the technological support and situational context necessary for them to continue to exist and to prosper as living languages in the digital age. This, if you like, is a sort of general framework, and this was signed off by all 52 partners. So this is something that all the partners in the project agreed on, and they are willing to support and bring forward. So on to the next slide now. There is an articulation of the metric. On the basis of the definition of digital language equality, we are also developing a metric. And that is a measure that reflects the digital readiness of a language and its contribution to the state of technology-enabled multilingualism, tracking its progress towards the goal of digital language equality. As you'll see in a minute, in this very brief overview, the metric will be computed on the basis of two sets of factors: technological factors first, and then contextual factors. And in the remaining part of the presentation, I'll briefly give you a feel for what is involved there. So the point of this is that the metric score should have a dynamic nature, so that the score for each language and the comparison across languages based on these metric scores can be regularly updated to track progress over time towards the overall goal of DLE for all of Europe's languages. So this is a visual representation. As you see on the left, you have 6 technological factors that I'll go into a bit more detail shortly. And on the right, you have 12 main categories of what we call contextual factors. We bring this together, and their combination determines the DLE score from the metric. As you see, there is a bit of overlap there for reasons that will become obvious in the next couple of minutes. So on now to a couple of specific examples, just again to give you a broad overview. We have 6 technological factors, or TFs, that contribute to the DLE metric. And these include corpora, tools and services, language models and computational grammars, lexical and conceptual resources, projects, and organizations. My colleague Maria will expand on this later on in her talk, But what I want to emphasize is that this was inspired by a number of studies and other related projects. And again, that we took care to make sure that what we do is fully aligned with the ELG work, and in particular, the metadata schema that has already been defined there. So just to give an example of the first at the top there, corpora, which are defined as corpora or data sets of text documents, text segments, audio transcripts, audio and video recordings, which can be monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual, and raw as well as annotated. Depending on these features of the corpora that are contributed to the LG, we will take this and assign scores that reflect the provision, the support of digital language resources for the particular language. On the right, the list of bullet points there shows you the type of metadata that we have been carefully putting together with the support of all the ELE partners and the language informants. On the basis of that, we are putting together scores against this metadata to produce the overall DLE metric score. So if we now move on to the next slide, please. Again, we now discuss the contextual factors. Those are the ones that are not intrinsically linguistic, if you like. The contextual factors are the situational conditions in which a particular language operates in its country, in its region, in its area, wherever it is used. And again, that is a list of work that has been carried out mostly in the last decade. As you can see, MetaNet is a big part of that. We're obviously building on that effort, as well as a number of other studies and reports and projects. Some of them have already been, of which have already been mentioned, so I'm not going to dwell on this. So just to give you a feel for what these contextual factors involve, on the next slide, we can see that so far there are 72 of them, which we've grouped into 12 micro categories, and we are doing some merging between them, some clarifications, and they're listed there. I'll just read the first few ones: economy, education, funding, industry, law, media, online, and a few others that will be very familiar to you in the community. So just to give you an example about economy, the first one on the list, that is the sort of breakdown of the indicators, of the quantifiers that to us help us focus on the economic factors that affect the position and the language, technologies, and resource provision for a particular language. You see, for example, size of the language technology NLP markets in the respective country, the investment instruments or accelerator programs targeting AI, language technology, NLP, startups, and so on and so forth. What we're doing at the moment is we're trying to refine these various factors, particularly the contextual ones, in addition to the technological factors. And we're defining the sort of relative weighting between the two sets of factors. And one open issue that we're working on at the moment is the effort to identify reliable and consistent sources for up-to-date data for as many contextual factors as possible, from which we can pull the data points to compute this DLE metric to make it consistent and comparable across languages. So this brings me towards the end of my presentation, and the last slide, to keep to time, is a sort of very quick look into what we're doing right now and the next steps for the next few weeks and months on this very exciting project of European language equality. So we believe that with the DLE definition and also the DLE metric that I presented to you very briefly today, we're providing a very useful instrument to the whole language technology and language resource community to sustain and to support and to encourage future inclusive and sustainable progress in our community. We are working out on the fine details and tweaking the technological factors and the contextual factors, because our aim is that DLE metric can provide intuitive and transparent scores. As Maria from ILSP will show you in the upcoming presentations, we are also implementing plans for a comparative visualization tool of the DLE metric scores across languages, what we call the dashboard. And in the next 2 months or so, we are planning to finalize and fully articulate the DLE definition and metric in order to reflect a very broad consensus from within the DLE consortium. But, and this is a very important message that I would like to you, and I think is the ideal closing line for my very brief presentation today, we're also very keen to have an ongoing exchange and ongoing interaction with the whole community, including external stakeholders that we do want to listen to from these projects. And, you know, I put a sort of list of stakeholders and groups that typically attend Meta Forum and making such a lively and important event in the community. If you belong to any of these groups or any similar constituencies, we would be very keen to talk to you, to listen to you, and take your views on board. So anybody from the industry, including developers, vendors, academics, researchers, scientists, the end users and consumers, so the average user of language technologies and resources, as well as decision and policy makers, and of course, anybody who has any interest at all in the languages being used, thriving, and being digitally supported as they believe, we believe they all deserve in Europe in the coming years. So that includes also language and rights advocates and activists. So I hope this has been a sort of informative and hopefully clear first introduction to the DLE definition and metric that we've adopted in the project. And I would like to thank you all very much for your attention today. Thank you. Thank you,
Federico. Thanks very much for the introduction and for the overview here. That was very, very helpful as further context for the three upcoming presentations. Cheers. Yeah, Federico already kind of introduced the next presenter, and that's our colleague Maria Giagkou from the Institute for Language and Speech Processing at the Research Center Athena in Athens, Greece. And the first part of the presentation will focus on the language resource and technology collection and language reports. Maria, parakalo.
Thank you, Georg. Good morning to all. Thank you for being here today. Yes, in this session, we will be presenting the preliminary findings of our investigation of the level of support the European languages receive through technology. The aim being an evidence-based investigation, we set off to compile an as complete as possible collection of metadata for resources that are available today for each European language, for most of European languages. Import these metadata to the ELG platform to further expand its own collection. So the outputs of this activity will be a series of reports per language. These reports will build upon the tradition and high impact of the 2012 MetaNet white papers. And as Federico already mentioned, the ELE dashboard, this will be part of the ELG platform, and it will facilitate search visualizations and comparisons across all the languages investigated by ELE. On the next slide, you can see that at least 38 project partners, our language experts, collaborate on this task, and more than 30 reports per language are expected to be delivered. The full list of languages and the ELE partners involved can be found on the ELE website on the link indicated on this slide. Next, please. What we have been looking for? Well, corpora in whichever modality or linguality type, terminologies, thesauri, any type of lexical resources, models and computational grammars, and finally, all types of NLP tools and LT-based services, from tokenizers and part-of-speech taggers to conversational systems and more. On the next slide, our endeavor, our task has resulted until now in a total of more than 6,000 metadata records identified and for resources identified and described by the ELE partners. These records will complement the existing and constantly growing inventory of ELG resources, thus providing information for the availability of more than 11,000 language resources and tools. The results presented today are based on this consolidated collection of 11,000 metadata records. It is assumed that the size of the collection is such that can provide us with a solid representative basis for the investigation of the level of technological support for European languages. More than half, in the previous slide, please, Georg. More than half of the resources are corpora and 1/4 are tools and LT services. In terms of their linguality type, 60% are monolingual resources, 1/4 are bilingual, and the rest multilingual. And as you can see on the next slide, all European languages under investigation are covered, including the EU official ones, the regional and minority ones, as well as other European and non-European languages. We will focus first on the 24 official EU languages, and the graph here presents the number of data, resources, and tools, and it already demonstrates the predominance of English. The English language is represented in 40% of the resources, followed by Spanish, German, and French. A numerous group of official EU languages are the medium ranks, while the smaller European languages, Irish and Maltese, follow in the last two positions. Among the non-EU official languages, on the next slide, two official state languages, Norwegian and Icelandic, and 4 co-official ones, Catalan, Basque, Galician, and Welsh, exhibit a noteworthy availability of data and tools. It is obvious here that the long tail evidences the scarcity of resources for all of Europe's lesser spoken regional languages. It seems that these small languages are practically non-existent in our ILT world today. Various additional analysis and comparisons, as you can see on the next slide, are possible, of course. This is just to take a sneak peek into the visualizations that will be possible on the ELG platform, where comparing on this first radar chart 3 big languages, French, German, and Spanish. We can investigate the different dimensions that contribute to a language's technological support. For instance, Spanish enjoys the largest number of available language models, but German is the winner in the tools and services dimension. On the second chart, comparing Polish to Italian, Czech, and Romanian, Polish is better represented with corpora, but not with tools and lexical resources. On the third one, Greek, Swedish, Finnish, and Portuguese are compared, and so on. Next, please. But are these indicators alone indicators for the availability, the number of corpora, lexical models, and tools enough to model the language of technological support of the languages? Probably not. As Federico explained in the previous presentation, we are additionally looking into a set of so-called contextual factors. One of them is the online presence of a language. To measure this, an indicator we can use is the number of Wikipedia articles in the language. This scatter graph demonstrates the relation between number of records in our ELE collection and number of Wikipedia articles. Could you click, please, Georg? Thanks. We can already see that there are 4 distinct groups of languages on this graph. English forms a single group. It's a dominant language. It surpasses all others, both in terms of the number of resources and of its digital presence. The second group includes German, French, and Spanish. These three languages enjoy a balanced representation in language resources and on the internet, while the third group includes Swedish, Italian, Dutch, Polish, and Portuguese. These seem to be languages that, although their number of resources falls within the average, the digital presence is dynamic enough to ensure availability of raw data, and these raw data can potentially be transformed into training data for the development of language models or language technology applications. The last numerous group, in the previous one, please, thanks, includes the rest of Europe's languages, which seem to be poorly supported by language resources, and at the same time they have a scarce presence on the internet. This scarce presence limits their potential for future development. So yes, next slide please, Georg. This last group is certainly worth further investigation to reveal possible underlying trends or clusters. If we remove the big languages and zoom in the fourth and third clusters, then you can see that Czech, Greek, and Finnish seem to lead in terms of the number of resources, and almost all of Europe's regional and minority languages are clustered close to the 0 point. Note please that these numbers are subject to change, and such graphs should be read only as an indication at this point, because the digital content is constantly growing, and of course our collection, the ELE and DLG collection, is progressing as well. So all the bubbles of the languages can move in the short term, both on the X and Y axis. And next slide, please, Georg. Thanks. Now, this is the final note of the short presentation. The ELE partners are currently working on compiling the reports by language. These reports will provide evaluations of the level of support each language receives through technology, its language resources, the funding it has received in the recent years, the projects that have been run, infrastructures, and many more. The reports are expected to be complete in February 2022, and they will be made available as a standalone digital publications, but additionally, parts of them will be fed into the final ELE strategic research agenda and into the ELE print book. I hope this has given a good picture of how our collection stands right now, and of the hints that can be extracted from it regarding the level of support that the European languages receive. And by this, thank you very much.
Very nice. Thanks so much, Maria, for this introduction and for the overview of where we stand with the metadata collection exercise, which is producing very, very interesting insights here. Much more fine-grained, much more detailed than what we've ever been able to do back 10 years ago in MetaNet, and this is a delight to see that this is possible right now. Okay, as mentioned in my introductory remarks, we will now continue also with Maria Giagkou from ILSP. We have two different surveys that we've been running in ELE, and Maria will talk about the first one, which is the survey that we distributed to the European language technology developers. Maria, the floor continues.
Exactly. 2 in a row. Thank you for your patience. So yes, to come up with a strategic research agenda and roadmap, sorry, The ELE project sought to consult the wider LT community to collect and analyze their views about how digital language equality can be achieved by 2030. Now, I said to consult the wider LT community, and our community is not only numerous, but it is also diverse. It comprises representatives from the research and academia and from the industry. What's more, our field is an interdisciplinary one, so our target group additionally represents the neighboring fields of artificial intelligence, digital humanities, social sciences, and humanities. We employed two main instruments to conduct the consultation rounds: a survey and a series of focused interviews. This presentation today is only about the preliminary survey results, as the interviews are still ongoing. Next, please. The survey we designed together with the ELE partners was structured in four main parts: respondents' profiling questions, the languages they support with their research activities and the tools and services, how the respondents evaluate the current situation, and finally, their expectations and predictions for the future of language technology. On the next slide, it was published as an online form through the EU survey platform and remained open for 3 months approximately, from mid-June to mid-October. It was disseminated through the ELE participating networks, the MetaNet network, the Association of European LT Companies, LT Innovate, the ELG project, the Confederation of Research Laboratories for AI in Europe, and the Common Language Resources and Technology Infrastructure, CLARI. The full results, including those from the interviews, will be featured in 6 reports expected to be completed in February 2022. Okay, so let's look at these preliminary results, how the LT community have responded to the survey questions. 333 responses in total have been collected from respondents who represent 247 different organizations. 74 of these organizations are research or academic institutions, and the rest represent the industry. Geographically, the organizations are distributed in all EU member states. Actually, 85% of the respondents are from EU member countries, but also from some other European and non-European countries. Our respondents, the next slide, are active in all LT areas, from basic NLP to speech to data distribution and so on. And they work with all EU official languages, as well as some other co-official and regional ones. Okay, so let's see on the next slide how they evaluate the current situation. As you can see on the detailed table, 88% of the respondents agree or strongly agree that basic research is still needed. In their open-ended answers, this has been further specified with references to the need for supporting basic research in linguistics and language modeling, in cross-lingual transfer learning, multimodal communication, and more. Competition with the international big players and the fragmentation of the European LT market are among the top 3 challenges identified. The lack of market interest for smaller languages is, of course, recognized, and 77% of the respondents agree that public procurement is insufficient, especially when it comes to smaller languages. It has been highlighted that small languages have to rely on public funding to balance the lack of market interest. Inadequate recognition of the importance of multilinguality is considered an obstacle. The threat of digital extinction has not been realized by the policymakers or by the wider public. And finally, the respondents emphasized that the lack of incentives for research in smaller languages is apparent. Publications for smaller languages in LT conferences and journals are often not considered impactful enough and rejected. On the forward-looking section, on the next slide. Thanks. When asked which factors drive the developer's decision to support a language, the most frequent answers have been scientific interest, the availability of language resources, and market interest. And in a different question on the next slide, the participants were requested to evaluate the effectiveness of a set of measures that should be taken in order to achieve digital language equality by 2030. It was interesting that in line with what was exchanged yesterday at the Language-Centric AI in Europe session of the Meta Forum, respondents think that a long-term funding program dedicated to language technology is the most effective way forward. Equally, the survey participants call for continuous investments in research infrastructures that support LT and for investments in methodology for technology transfer and adaptation. And on the final slide, in an attempt to conclude with what is truly a very, very short summary of the numerous quality input by the respondents, four topics have been emphatically reiterated by a great number of survey participants. The first one is the availability of resources. The LT community thinks and visions that by 2030, all European languages should have developed the critical mass of resources that are adequate for developing language technologies. These include not only raw data, but also multilingual massive language models, as well as standardized training and evaluation data. The terms and conditions under which language data are released and shared is the second recurring topic. Language resources should be available for free or at a reasonable cost for both research and commercial purposes. The respondents call for a revised legislative framework that facilitates the use of language data and the application of data mining techniques. On the front of development, it is considered that the LT developers should work in the coming years towards automations for the construction, annotation, and curation of language data, to address the issue of data bias, and to improve transfer learning methods. Finally, with regard to the shared scientific goal, deep language understanding by 2030 is expected to help achieve seamless human-like interactivity, viable discourse interpretation, and ubiquitous natural language interfaces for all Europeans in their own language. And with this very short summary, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Natalia, for these initial results and preliminary results that will be further refined in the next couple of months. Thank you. Coming now to the second survey, the complementary survey on the needs, demands, ideas, visions of European LT users. Yeah, so we just have the developers. Now we are moving on to the users and consumers. And our colleague Natalia Resende from Dublin City University Adapt Center is responsible for that in the project. And Natalia will provide a brief what's what on this. Natalia, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Georg, for the presentation, and thanks everyone for coming here today. So I will talk about the LT Users and Consumers Survey, which is part of the task 2.2 of the project. And then main goal of this survey is to collect and analyze the views of users and consumers of language technologies regarding the necessary and desired developments to achieve full digital language equality by 2030. And it's also an objective to explore how digital and language equality can be promoted from the users and consumers perspective. So next slide, please. So to achieve this goal, we carried out a consultation process through online survey, as in the LT developer survey, with the objective to investigate the expectations and needs for the pursuit of full digital language equality supported by language technologies. So these stakeholders include representatives of organizations and communities of users and consumers of language technologies. And also includes some contributions also came from self-employed language technology users, for example, translators and researchers from different research areas. So this survey was distributed through 6 deliverable leaders. So then you can go next, please. Those are ECSPM, FNU, Ellen, Liber, and NAME. So then we prepared the survey. The deliverable leads from these organizations, they reviewed the survey and they sent the survey to their networks association. So so then the survey was then reviewed, and also they are now collecting more information through interviews. So now that the deliverable leaders are collecting interviews. Next, please. And the results of this input will serve as an input for the strategic agenda and roadmap for to achieve full language, digital language equality by 2030. So the survey was also structured into 4 main parts. So in the first part, respondents profiling, they answered questions related to organizations they work for, and also their roles in the organization and countries they are based in. In the second part, they answered questions about language they work with, and also if they are planning to include more languages into their workflow in the future. In the evaluation of the current situation, they have the opportunity to answer questions indicate differences in technological support between the EU languages they work with and also any minority languages they work with. These questions include, for example, if they use differences in language technologies between the languages, and also availability of language technologies between the languages. The survey was open from 21st of June until mid-October, and then we collected a total of 246 responses. And the survey was also set up in the EU survey platform. Next, please. So then we have here some preliminary results. So as we can see, most of the respondents, they are based in Croatia, but there are also many in Spain, UK, Ireland, Germany, France. So those are the most frequent countries in the survey. The next, please. And also most of the respondents, they are working for organizations in the education sector. There are also many in the digital humanities sector, information technology, research, public administration, business services, social sciences, media, and publishing. So those are the most frequent sectors in the survey. And for the languages, we can see that most respondents work with English, German, French, Spanish, and there are also many more languages represented in the survey, but those that are the most frequent languages represented in the survey. About the interviews. So the purpose of the interview is to collect more information, more data that could be relevant to achieve the objectives of the ELE project. And the interviews, they are being currently conducted by deliverable leaders. So they are contacting survey respondents that agreed to participate in this follow-up interview, this follow-up discussion. And they are these interviews, they are also being conducted with other people that did not respond to the survey, but deliverable leaders consider they could add value to the report, to the final report. And they are using the survey as an e-script and adapting the survey questions as appropriate to the context of the discussion. And deliverable leaders, they are also instructed to focus on the key challenges of the ELE funding program, and also some recommendations provided by the interviewees. Next, please. So we are also conducting another survey. We are also planning to conduct a survey with the EU citizen, with the European citizens between 18 and 65 years old. The main objective is to hear their voices about the digital language equality, especially where they see problems and challenges. So it's a short survey with only 10 questions. This survey is being set up on the Question Pro online platform, and it will be distributed and also translated into more than 30 languages, actually all languages covered by the ELE project. And the input of this survey will be consolidated into a new report, deliverable 2.17, D2.17, reporting the results of this survey. So, so that's all. That's the overview of the task and overview of the two surveys. So there is one survey already with the results being analyzed, and a survey that is being in the process of being set up. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you very much, Natalia, for this overview. That was quite a bit of content already in terms of our preliminary results. Let me try to just very briefly summarize the main points. Yeah, a summary of the summaries. Just very quickly, digital language equality as a concept has been defined. In the first version, we have dozens of technological and contextual factors long listed, many of which will be picked for the final definition that we will then also implement in the form of the dashboard in ELG, of course. Yeah, 2 surveys have been conducted. The citizen survey is currently being prepared for launch. We are also in the process of updating or revising, extending the MetaNet white papers with the qualitative analysis of technology support of our languages in Europe. In terms of metadata collection for language resources, language technologies, with the whole ELE consortium, we've collected more than 6,000 additional records which flow into this overall statistical analysis that we presented today. These will obviously be made available in ELG so that other colleagues can also benefit from these results whenever they look for interesting resources for certain languages. And as mentioned, based on this big and rich metadata collection, we will then be able to compute and visualize the DLE metric through a dedicated dashboard in ELG. And this approach enables us to monitor the development of DLE in Europe over time. Yeah, so the idea is that whenever you look at the dashboard, you look at the visualizations and the graphs, and then whenever someone makes available a new resource, maybe that fills a certain gap, and then the score, the DLE score, the metric will increase a little bit, yeah, just through the sheer making this available, through the sheer availability of this resource in this system in ELG. Yeah, so almost all analyses will be ready in approximately April 22, and then later on we will compile everything also in the form of a book that will be then handed over also to the European Union. Right on, we have a couple of minutes for questions. Before we tackle those, I would like to point out once again our socials. Yeah, so if you're interested to stay in touch, check our LinkedIn page. You can follow us on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. And I just realized that we forgot to mention YouTube. We have a YouTube channel where this presentation today, the session today, like all the other Metaforum sessions, has been streamed live, and it will be made available later today. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter, like 2,500 other people have done before you. Thanks so much also on behalf of the colleagues. I would like to thank the colleagues again for their valuable presentations and contributions. And let's have a look at the questions. We have a couple of minutes left. Are there any questions that we need to tackle? There was one question from Vincent about sign languages and resources for and about sign languages, which are, yeah, let's say part of the package. Yeah, they are included in ELG already. Many sign language resources are in ELG already. We have 2 ELG pilot projects on sign languages. These will also be made available in ELG. Are there any other questions? Yes, put them in the QA tool, or maybe in the chat. That's easier, more convenient. There's one question. I'm not trying to pronounce the name. I'm sorry. That ice is too thin. So the question is, I have heard it said that one of the best ways to promote a language technology for minority languages is to encourage more Wikipedia page creation. So free raw data is available. Yeah, that's definitely a good start. The Wikipedia team is through the German Wikipedia part of our project, yeah, and we are in discussions with them what this specific instrument could mean, but it's definitely a good idea. Yeah, so if there is no Wikipedia in existence for that specific language that you have in mind, maybe one can be started. But many languages, many regional languages as well are already covered, but most of them only have a handful of pages. Any other comments on the Wikipedia question? Doesn't seem to be the case, and I can't see any additional comments in the chat. My suggestion would be then to thank again my colleagues in the project. Thanks very much for your presentations. Thanks to the audience for your interest in this topic. And with this, we can close the ELE session of this year's Meta Forum and switch to the closing already. Yeah, and this will be done right away. I will just need to quickly stop my screen sharing, stop my slides, open some other slides. Which I happen to have here. So with this, we have already approached and arrived at the closing session of this year's Meta Forum. And as usual, I will keep it very, very brief. We had, just looking at the program, once again, we had 3 not packed days. Yeah, that was part of the plan, not to have packed days, but to concentrate on morning sessions only. So that we can make use of the rest of the day also for some other things. That's the benefit of the virtual mode, right? So we had, after the opening session with Philippe Gelon's presentation on the European language data space and an overview of where ELG currently is, we had a look at some of the ELG pilot projects. We looked at European LT industry on Tuesday, and also on various language-centric AI projects in Europe and some national projects as well. Today, we focused primarily on ELE, European Language Equality. There's one more thing on the agenda, which we decided to put after the closing, and that's the ELG tutorial and training session. Yeah, after a short break, once we're done here, there will be from 11 o'clock onwards, 11 o'clock Berlin time, so in about half an hour. There will be an ELG tutorial and training session, 90 minutes, where members of the ELG technical team will provide helpful advice and some recipes how to make available resources and tools through ELG. The whole shebang will be explained, and I encourage all of you to participate in this. So looking back at this year's conference, it was unfortunately the second virtual Meta Forum. We had, as mentioned, the adapted format with shorter sessions. We had half-day meetings only stretched over 3 days. And the program itself was a bit shorter than last year. That was also deliberate. It was intentional. It was meant to be an update edition between last year's bigger conference and next year's also hopefully bigger conference. And I hope we can meet up again in person next year in Brussels in June. Looking at the cases and numbers of corona incidents and infections in Germany right now, I'm a bit doubtful that this will really happen, but one can dream. Hopefully, if everybody gets vaccinated, this will happen. Today, and also yesterday and the day before yesterday, we emphasized the important core aspects of ELG, also of ELE, and we also had a project expo with almost 40 different projects. That was amazing to see this breadth and the variety of projects working in our space. We set a new record again with this conference this year with way more than 500 registered participants. As usual, we have to check how many unique Zoom users we had. but we will provide the numbers at least, or as soon as we can, maybe next year at the conference. And despite some of the technical hiccups that we experienced, we had very good feedback so far, and the whole ELG team, including the ELE team too, is very happy about the event and how it all went. So maybe a few more, few broader remarks regarding Europe's wider, I like to call it the multilingual Europe community. There is quite a bit of traction for this topic, for the overall topic of language technologies, NLP, language models, large language models, also generative models. They are mentioned left, right, and center. All countries are interested in these, and all languages want their language models. So there are many opportunities in Horizon Europe in terms of research, and in Digital Europe in terms of deployment, as Federico also explained. In addition, of course, the national funding programs. I'm saying this as a German, and there are many opportunities in Germany for AI-related projects, which is great. So one of the key obstacles, even challenges, open things to do is still the collaboration between the European level and the different countries and regions, the member states. Countries should concentrate on getting national regional funding programs that exclusively support the development of technologies, including models for their language. ELE here with the strategic agenda will surely help. We are trying to get off the ground a bigger funding program, let's call it a funding program or funding opportunities for our topics on the European level. Obviously, that's one crucial goal that we are working towards too. This will take a bit more time, and until we have that, I encourage all the different countries and regions also to tap into their local funding programs and to talk to their local ministries and funding agencies regarding the important topics that we will identify also along the way in ELE. One still pressing issue is that as researchers, as scientists, we want to compete with our colleagues on a global level. So what we usually do is we use English, we work on English, we do our research in English, we build prototypes and systems and new innovative applications for English instead of for our own languages, our native languages, because English is typically the language in which we compete in our systems, in the shared tasks. There are exceptions, of course, like WMT, but all in all, this needs to change, and somehow we need to work on maybe incentives and how to incentivize also work on regional languages, on languages that are usually perceived as being under-resourced. Nevertheless, the coordination should definitely happen on the international level. ELE and ELG will provide helpful input and advice, and will hopefully build bridges here. One of these is the crucial challenge of data availability, which needs to be tackled, of course, clearly because it's language specific also on the regional and national level, but maybe we can find good solutions on the international level and best practices how to do this. ELG and ELE will help establish the bridges needed, and both the technology platform with the services and data sets, ELG NCCs, the wider community, the European LT NLP community. There are, of course, additional projects that are super relevant here. Many of them have been mentioned in the last couple of days, like Clarin, like ILSP, and also conferences like LREC, who all play an important role here. So finishing up, what are our next steps? What are our next steps in, especially in ELG? I'm leaving out ELE here because we just talked about that. ELG was extended by 6 months due to COVID. The project like ELE will end in June 22. There will be on the ELG platform, there will be further extensions, additional features. Of course, there will be additional services, additional resources, additional organizations that we bring in. One of the crucial components that we have been working on already and that will be integrated and made available next year is what we call the billing component, so that we have billing functionality for commercial services and also a process. It's not too trivial to set this up, and a process for financial reimbursement of commercial providers who make available commercial tools through ELG. Once we have the legal entity, we will be able to have paying customers, could be individuals, could also be company customers of ELG services, for example, who then have to pay a certain amount, and part of that money will then flow back to the respective commercial providers. That's always been part of the plan. More on this then next year in June, hopefully in Brussels. Release 3 of the ELG platform is coming up in early 22. The ELG pilots of the first open call have all finished up already, and the open call 2 pilots will finish up next year. ELE is running at full steam already beyond the halfway point and providing a plethora of important insights and results that will be all packaged up and presented next year. We are working on further community building, community consolidation, including industry and research in the form of the ELG Roadshow, and the promotion of the ELG platform is also continuing. Last point that I want to mention that we didn't talk about at length at this Meta Forum is the sustainability of the ELG initiative, further elaboration of the legal entity, then establishing the legal entity and putting it into practice. And Philippe Gelin, in his presentation on Monday, he mentioned the language data space, and I tried to form a good name here, European Language Grid Data Space. Maybe that's a bit too complex and a bit too long, but we also have to work on this, of course, too. So once again, please join us again, I guess on this Zoom channel here, right? Yeah, Katrin is nodding. Join us again at 11 o'clock for the ELG tutorial and training session. Having said that, thanks so much to all presenters, to all participants of the panel discussions, to all participants of the conference. Also, special thanks to the whole ELG team, all consortium partners who provided input to the different sessions, to the results, to the implementation, to the resources, to the services, and so on, and especially to our local team here at DFKI that has worked tirelessly to make it all happen. Thanks so much. Some of them are in the room here. Thanks so much, everybody. And thanks so much for your interest and for continuing to visit Meta Forum, and see you in the tutorial in half an hour. Bye-bye.